So today we're going to talk about the human nervous system. Yes, I know, sounds exciting, like watching wall dry on a paint. Watching paint dry on a wall, Joe. Stop saying things backwards. That might be a sign of something. I'm not sure. So if you experience complex post-traumatic stress disorder or developmental trauma or any type of trauma-related disorder, you would know that your nervous system is like a bad home security system where every little movement, you open up a window, you close a door wrong, or you open up a door the wrong way, or your neighbor comes into the front yard and your alarm system is just going bonkers at every little thing that is not supposed to. Well, that's the nervous system of someone who experienced trauma. And yes, our nervous system is built for survival, but it can be overreactive at times. So let's start out easy. Let's start out with the window of tolerance. The way to think about the window of tolerance is our nervous sweet spot, where we can handle most day-to-day things and stay within our boundaries, our window of tolerance. A way to think about that is if you take this can of soda, right? I'm just drinking it. No big deal. But if I start moving and trying to drink it, it gets a little more stressful, right? It's really hard to try to balance this. And if I really start moving, you get the picture. Now you put me on a motorcycle or car and then you tell me to drink this bottle of soda or can of soda, it's going to be much harder to drink because of the stress level that my physical body is in. So the window of tolerance is if you stay in the middle, you're calm, you're present, you can handle most day-to-day semi-normal stressors like a normal human being. Now, if you go above that window of threshold, then you're going to have something called hyperarousal. That's where your fight or flight mode is kicking in, your heart's racing, your adrenaline's pumping, and you're thinking to yourself, danger, 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 at the minor, small stressors that normally you wouldn't react to. Now, if you go below that threshold, that's hypoarousal. So that's when you feel kind of like you're freezing, you feel numb, you feel dull, and you're just not responding to things the way you used to with excitement. Now, if you entertain me and just come on this geeky nerd adventure, just for 1 second, let's break down the neuroscience of what's happening when our window of tolerance goes to hyperarousal. So hyperarousal happens when your sympathetic nervous system, your body's gas pedal, goes full throttle and it just can't stop. You have cortisol, adrenaline just flooding your system. The amygdala, deep down in your brain, the scanning threat detector goes on like batshit crazy mode. Everywhere that you see is a threat. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain right up in the front that we want to run the show, kind of takes a back seat, and every little thing, your amygdala is overriding your prefrontal cortex. So instead of being in the car and say, hey, it's fine, it's just a squirrel, your amygdala goes, no, 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 it's a squirrel, it's a squirrel. And so your prefrontal cortex gets muted as a result of an oversensitive or hyper vigilant amygdala. So the result is that you overreact to many things that normally you wouldn't react to when you are in this state. And on the flip side of that is hypoarousal. It's when your parasympathetic nervous system just hits the brakes. It sees a squirrel like from 50 yards away and it just slams on the brake, and your buddy is like, dude, the squirrel is like 50 yards away. Why are you stopping so hard? Actually, that's a pretty good way to paint the freeze response. 50 yards away from the squirrel, you stop, is because your amygdala is exhausted and it's signaling to you that nope, we're gonna shut down because we don't want to deal with this little crazy squirrel running all over the world. Your hippocampus, which stores context and memory, it can't differentiate between past and present trauma. This squirrel signifies that something bad is happening right now, which can be an indicator from something that was happening bad in the past. And then the insular cortex, which helps you feel your body, it kind of goes on this permanent vacation. It says, you know what, I'm not gonna deal with this right now. We're just gonna let the amygdala and everything else run the show. Let that reptilian brain run the show. And then the result is that you do feel numb, you feel disassociated, and you feel like you're out of your body watching someone else run that movie. Which, honestly, if you ever experienced that, can be downright suck. It doesn't feel good. It's a weird ass feeling that you just say, I wish this can go away. Just wave a wand and make it disappear. Now, you might be wondering, hey Joe, how the hell does that fit into CPTSD or developmental trauma? I'm so glad you asked, but I gotta burp a little bit, so let's take a break. My window of tolerance for this Coca-Cola Zero, it's probably not that great. I haven't really been drinking soda, but we had a little party this weekend and we had some random cans of soda, and I've been drinking it and I realized I really don't like soda at all. But I like the caffeine. I do love caffeine, so that's why I'm drinking it. And if Coca-Cola, you want to sponsor me, let me know. I'm open. Me and my 160 subscribers. So if you grew up with chaos, neglect, abuse, and just trauma, then your window of tolerance by default is going to be much smaller than the average person who didn't grow up that way. And this is a result that your system had to learn early that we need to survive. We can't just exist and thrive like normal people because our situation is much different. So in turn, our amygdala gets super overdeveloped. It's ready to fight at all times. It's like a frontline Navy SEAL just always on guard. And then as a result of always being so turned on that way, your prefrontal cortex goes, you know what? We're going to just sit back and underdevelop, and we're not going to deal with this issue. And what that looks like in everyday life is your reasoning aspect of your brain just kind of takes a back seat, and I'm going to just handle this through fighting or flighting, fawn or freeze, but that's a conversation for another day. And then your hippocampus remembers danger, but it wildly forgets how to put the cues to like, no, this is safe. So you have a problem with past and present memories of danger. Hence why you have what they call emotional flashbacks, which is an emotional state that takes you back into a traumatized memory. And you don't even know this sometimes. There's no vivid flashbacks. It's just this emotional overwhelmingness of emotions. So what that sums up as, your survival skills become excellent. You probably can handle crisis like a freaking world-class expert, but the day-to-day life gets very mundane, very dulled down, or you just overreact to everything in a very disproportionate sense. So here's the good news, because I just gave you a ton of bad news, and I just basically said, hey, your window of tolerance is like this small compared to being this big. But that's not the case, because as you know, the brain can change. It's called neuroplasticity. And that's a fancy ass way of saying your brain can change. And I said that already. So you might be like, Joe, just forget all that other stuff. Just tell me how my brain can change. So the good thing is we have this thing called vagus nerve regulation. Your vagus nerve is basically this big ass nerve that's attached deep down in there all the way to the vital organs in your body. They send all types of signals to be calm, to be chill, to sleep, to relax. And it directly connects to your brain. So it's been scientifically proven, if you are conscious about slowing down your breath, deep breathing, which to me I find extremely boring, so I'm not going to pretend like I'm the world's best advocate for breathing. But in saying that, I also find it extremely helpful. Breathing for me is one of, if not the most powerful thing that I can do when I'm in that hyperarousal state to calm myself down. That signal of breathing or humming, it sends a direct signal to your vagus nerve to calm down. And that calm down signal sends a direct signal to your brain to say, hey, we can calm this hyperarousal state. And we know that that directly calms your heart rate down. It produces all these beautiful chemicals, these hormones that make us feel good and not so ready to fight. And repeated exposure to that kind of relaxation over time, every day, couple minutes a day, your brain literally starts to rewire itself. Rewire. I can't speak. It's super early in the morning. It's about 5 o'clock in the morning. And I don't want to be super loud, so I'm mumbling. I'm not really sure why I explained that, but anyway. And now here's for the good stuff. So I love this part of it, even though I'm terrible at it. And that's shaking, dancing, and yoga. Particularly, I'm pretty bad at dancing. But I dance anyway because it makes people laugh. So I like to make people laugh, so I dance. Even though I like to dance and I can't. Does it make sense? It doesn't make sense. Make it make sense. I can't. And you might be saying, hey, Joe, how does movement like dancing, yoga, or even just shaking help us? Well, as you know, if you ever read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, sometimes there's a reason why talk therapy right out the gate doesn't work for trauma survivors, including myself. I tried it 20 years ago. I'm like, I feel more traumatized than ever before. And that's because we know now that when you've been traumatized, your body stays stuck in this state. In order to get that out, you need to move so you can get that vagus nerve involved. You can get that prefrontal cortex back online and send those signals to your mind, body, and your soul. Maybe your soul's involved. I don't know if there's any research for the soul aspect of it, but the trauma starts to move around. And a lot of times when you experience trauma, we tend to be very rigid. That's my New York accent. We can't say very and rigid at the same time. It just closes our mouth up in a weird way. But we tend to be very rigid. Our affect tends to be very blunted, and we tend to be stiff as a result of the trauma. But when you learn how to move that trauma and you learn how to stretch that trauma out, particularly if you go to hot yoga, if you've been to hot yoga, god dang it. But over time, again, that repetition will start to tell your body and your brain, we can let this trauma go. And even if you never 100% feel symptomatic free, like some of us would never ever not feel developmental trauma or complex trauma symptoms, but we can learn how to manage it much better. And that to me is the most important part. Not trying to cure yourself, but trying to manage and heal yourself over time. And then we have mindfulness and grounding. Mindfulness meditation has been shown to bring your prefrontal cortex back online, back to the forefront where it should be running the show. Tells your amygdala, calm the hell down. It brings your cortisol levels back to normal. It helps your hippocampus differentiate between what's happening now and what was a past memory that was unsafe. As a result, your brain gets an upgrade. Meditation over time, this is probably one of the most researched subjects when it comes to trauma, has been proven to help relax our hypervigilant impulse, instinctual response of our brain. It tells our animal brain, calm the fuck down, we got it. Damn, that was pretty vulgar. I didn't mean to be so vulgar. It's only Saturday at 5 in the morning. What the hell are you doing? And then we have safety connections, which is a big struggle that many of us trauma survivors deal with. People are not safe. I don't need to trust people. They're unreliable. I'm going to trust myself. But safe connections have been proven to help us co-regulate. And what that means is a healthy, balanced person will teach us how to be healthy and balanced through how they act. And our brain will go, oh, that's how you're supposed to do it. So my primitive brain doesn't just take over and start smashing everything because the waiter gave me crackers instead of a piece of bread. And then as a result of this connection, we have this beautiful chemical called oxytocin. It's the love chemical, but it's love in regards to intimate relationships, not just love from a partner or a spouse. And when we have that oxytocin flowing in our body, it helps the amygdala just relax. It helps that window get bigger as opposed to getting smaller. So your window of tolerance, you want to get as big as you can so you can handle these day-to-day situations without triggering yourself. So the good and the bad part is trauma does suck. It's something that most of us didn't ask for. But the good thing is research now is showing more than ever that you can heal. It's proven what we already knew for decades, that complex trauma, developmental trauma is real. And with that being said, you can always be responsible for your recovery. And even though you didn't control your past, you can control your future. Anyway, with that being said, control yourself to subscribe, to like, and leave those comments. Let me know what you think, and I appreciate you.